Hey everybody, hope you're doing well today, this evening, this morning, depending on where you're at in the world. Right? Evening, morning, afternoon. Well, I just wanted to read a portion of the book that I've been reading and going through. We want to get this author, David Barton. Dude is awesome. Once I'm done with this book specifically, ah, try not to throw all my books everywhere, right? There we go. I'm going to get into this one as well. Same author. This book, however, has chapters. But this book that I'm reading doesn't have any chapters. It's just pretty much a full document. Um, really focuses on all, or at least the large majority of black men that came, and blacks in general, that came to America that weren't dealing with slavery. But even if they had, uh, pointing out who it is that has pushed for the anti-slavery, both in mind as well as body. Uh, and so, anyway, I just wanted to read a portion of this. So I think I will start. Yes. Here we go. Choo choo choo. Actually, start back here. Here we go. When we call to mind the fact that the Klan persecution is waged against men for for the simple reason that they dare vote with Republican Party that saved the Union intact, the question is sometimes asked, why do not the courts of law afford redress? We answer, the courts are in many instances under the control of those Democrats who are wholly inimical or enemies to the impartial administration of law and equity. What benefit would result from appeal? Turning the page would be a good idea. What benefit would result from appeal to tribunals or courts whose officers are secretly in sympathy with the very evil against which we are striving? If the Negroes, numbering 1/8 of the population of these United States, would only cast their vote in the interest of the Democratic Party, all open measures of violence against them would be immediately suspended and their rights as American citizens recognized. But I can only say that we love freedom more vastly, more than slavery. Consequently, we hope to keep clear of the Democrats. I will say that in the state of South Carolina, there is no disturbance of an alarming character in any one of the counties in which the Republicans have a majority. The troubles are usually in those sections in which the Democrats have control. I say, to the entire membership of the Democratic Party, that upon your hands rests the blood of the loyal men of the South. Disclaim it as you will. The stain is there to prove your criminality before God and the world in the day of retribution which will surely come. I pity the man, or party of men who would seek to ride into power over the dead body of a legitimate opponent. I can say for my people that we are fully determined to stand by the Republican Party and the government. We have resolved to be loyal and firm. And, as Queen Esther said long ago, if we perish, we perish. I earnestly hope the bill will pass. Now I'm going to go, like I have in other videos, I'm going to go to the bookmark, or not bookmark, but the noting for this, so I can say out loud exactly where that came from. I really do appreciate this author, David Barton, who footnotes everything. So that was 224. So 224 says, the Congressional Globe, page 394 to 395, Representative Joseph H. Rainey addressing the Ku Klux Klan bill, April 1st, 1871. All right. Now, and I do believe, yes, there is a picture of him. That guy right there, him right there is who just said all of that. A black man. Right? Now, let us skip on along. That bill did pass, but only over the united opposition of Democrats. Not one Democrat, either from the North or the South, supported the Civil Rights Bill to punish Klan violence. Again, I really appreciate how David Barton writes. It's not like how you feel or whatnot. It's just like, here's the facts and here's the footnotes for the facts. And so, 4 years later, black Americans again played a significant role in the debate on the Civil Rights Bill. This time, the Civil Rights Bill of 1875 to prohibit segregation and racial discrimination. Representative Richard Kane of South Carolina, a clergyman and bishop of AME denomination, as well as strong political leader, forcefully rebutted the Democrats' arguments in favor of a segregation and discrimination. He says, I have sat in this house nearly 9 months and have listened to the gentleman recognized as the leader on the other side, i.e. the Democrats, attempting to demonstrate the inferiority of a race of men whom they have so long outraged, and to cast a slur upon them because they have been helpless. And the Democratic gentleman from Virginia calls in question the propriety of passing the Civil Rights Bill. I cannot agree with him. Why not pass the Civil Rights Bill? The Civil Rights Bill simply declares this, that there shall be no discrimination between citizens of this land so far as the laws of the land are concerned. I can find no fault with that. The great living principle of the American government is that all men are free. We admit from every land and every nationality men to come here and, under the folds of the noble flag, repose in peace and protection, yet because, forsooth, in truth, God Almighty made the face of the Negro black, Democrats would deny him the right, though he be a man. Mr. Speaker, I regard the Civil Rights Bill as among the best measures that ever came before Congress. Why, sir? Is it that the very foundation of good government? I have no fear for the future. I have faith in this country. The great principle which underlies our government of liberty, of justice, of right, will eventually prevail in this land, and we shall enjoy equal rights under the laws. Let the laws of the country be just. Let the laws of the country be equitable. A word that was used far long ago before it became a trigger word. This is all we ask, and we will take our chances under the laws in this land. Place all citizens upon one broad platform, and if the Negro is not qualified to hoe his row in this contest of life, then let him go down. I'll read that again. And if the Negro is not qualified to hoe his row in this contest of life, then let him go down. All we ask of in this country is to put no barriers between us, to lay no stumbling blocks in our way, to give us freedom to accomplish our destiny. In our way, to give us freedom to accomplish our destiny. Do this, sir, we shall ask nothing more. I just want to pause there, right? All these, all these arguments, well, it's their fault or their fault. It's not fair here or not fair there. If it was more fair in the 1800s for black folks and fighting for absolute right and citizenship, if it was more fair then how in the world can it not be so fair now? It seems to me that it has more to do with the mindset and which mindset you're being led by. Conservative or democratic ideologies, then it has to do with the color of my skin or your skin. That's not to say that there has been times in America, or that there's times even happening right now, that skin has played a big part. In the past, yes, okay, so I've been discriminated against, both for my stature as well as my skin color sometimes. But it's interesting right now that we have a black supremacy that rules America in so many ways. Because I'm black, I should be treated a certain specific special way. That's supremacy. That's a type of supremacy. That is black supremacy, because it is so much based on my skin. And we cry about supremacy, white supremacy. Come on now. Let's get over the mindset and stand up. Despite these types of powerful speeches, Democrats continued their relentless attacks against the bill. In fact, immediately following one such Democratic tirade against the bill, Black Representative Robert Brown Elliott rose to respond. It was such a climatic moment in that artists of the day created illustrations depicting the verbal battle between this black Republican and racist Democrat Alexander Stephens, former vice president of the Confederacy, who was now a leader of the Democrats' arguments against the Civil Rights Bill. This is the picture that they're talking about right here. Elliott's rebuttal of Stephens was eloquent. He began, "It is a matter of regret to me that it is necessary at this day that I should rise in the presence of an American Congress to advocate a bill which simply asserts equal rights and equal privileges for all classes of American citizens. But the motive that impels me is as broad as the Constitution. Eliot explained how black Americans had long fought for American freedom. In the events that led to the achievement of American independence, the Negro bore his part bravely upon many battlefields. For example, the tall granite shaft which a grateful state, Connecticut, has reared above its sons, who fell in defending Fort Griswold against the attack of Benedict Arnold in 1781. At the Battle of Groton Heights, bears the name of Jordan Freeman and other brave men of African race who there cemented with their blood the cornerstone of the Republic during the American Revolution and at the Battle of New Orleans in the War of 1812. Under the immortal Jackson, a colored regiment held the extreme right of the American line unflinchingly and drove back the British column that pressed upon them at the point of a bayonet. And in 1861, during the Civil War, the Negro, true to that patriotism and love of country that have ever characterized and marked his history on the continent, came to the aid of the government in its efforts to maintain the Constitution. Now, we are told by the distinguished gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Stevens, that Congress has no power under the Constitution to pass such a civil rights law. Has not the judgment of the gentleman from Georgia been wrapped by the ghost of the dead doctrines of states' rights? Has he been altogether free from prejudice engendered by long training in the school of politics? What well nigh destroyed this government? I am astonished that the gentleman from Georgia should have been so grossly misled. He now offers this government, which he has done his utmost to destroy, a very poor return for its magnanimous or gracious and forgiving treatment. To come here to seek to continue by the assertion of doctrine obnoxious to the true principles of our government, the burdens and oppressions which rest upon 5 million of his countrymen. These are some of the monuments that they're talking about. Upon 5 million of his countrymen. Slaves who never failed to lift their earnest prayers for the success of this government when the gentleman, Mr. Stevens, was asking to break up the union of these states and to blot out the American Republic from the galaxy of nations. Sir, it is scarcely 12 years since the gentleman shocked the civilized world by announcing the birth of a government which rested on human slavery as its cornerstone. The progress of events that swept away that pseudo-government which rested on greed, pride, and tyranny, and the race whom he then ruthlessly spurned and trampled on, are there to meet him in debate and to demand that the rights which are enjoyed by their former oppressors, who vainly sought to overthrow a government which they could not prostitute to the base use of slavery. The gentleman from Georgia has learned much since 1861, but he is still a laggard behind the times. Let him lend his influence to complete the proud structure of the legislation which makes this nation worthy of the great Declaration of Independence, which heralded its birth, and he will have done which will most nearly redeem his reputation. Eliot's magnificent response did not convert Alexander Stephens or other Democrats, but it was so eloquent that it silenced them. In fact, the Democrats' rebuttal against Eliot was too weak that the best they could do was to claim that the speech was not really his, because he's black. That is what is so brilliant, that someone else must have written it, that surely a black American such as Eliot could not have created such a masterful speech. I'm going to look at footnote 230 specifically, which says, African Methodist Episcopal Church Review, Ohio, 1892, April 1892, volume 13, number 4, page 369, from an article on Robert Brown Eliot by Theophilus Menton. And that Democrats' response against Eliot's eloquence is reminiscent of an old lawyer's adage that admonishes, when you have the facts on your side, argue the facts. When you have the law on your side, argue the law. When neither is on your side, change the subject and question the motives of the opposition. That was exactly the approach taken by the Democrats against Eliot. Again, a black man. He so completely befuddled them with his oratorical skills that all they could do was claim someone else must have written his speech. Now, seeing if I want to, how far I want to go. I think I'll stop there, right? But it's funny to me that for some ideologies that want to really make claims that they are for a people, a group, sure seems to me that it's a lot of the same old fear-mongering. If it doesn't fit the narrative, then even if you're black, woman, man, whatever they're screaming about or arguing for, it doesn't matter, because if you don't fit the narrative, like I don't fit the narrative for most of this stuff going on with BLM, the organization, or CRT, because I don't fit that narrative, I'm looked at as an outcast from that narrative because I don't get along with the get along, right? And but it just seems to me that the same thing that was happening in the 1800s, 1700s with the democratic ideology and those who followed it really is the same. Do the fear mongering in any way possible. Really do what Hitler did by the separate kind of separating everybody into their groups, the oppressed and the oppressor, all of that stuff. These ideas. Again, the more I read the history, the more I'm like, you know what? You miss me with all that noise. I want to hang out with Americans, and that's it. If you're an American, you want to have a conversation, we could do that. If you are an American that regrets being an American, and you don't want to talk about solutions as Americans, you can go ahead and miss me. But leave a like, comment, subscribe, keep it respectful, and I'll come back with another video here in the